It's good to have you here for our second day of our January 2019 board meeting of the Colorado Water Congress, our Conservation Board. That's tomorrow. Colorado Water Congress is tomorrow. So it's nice to have you all here, and we have a couple new faces in the crowd, so we're going to be excited to hear from them as well. But we'll start with our basin director's report, or do you want to? Yes.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to let Director Mitchell.
I didn't want to let today pass without recognizing a couple more new faces that have come in. Yesterday, that seemed like the theme of the day. But today we have some really special people in the room who happen to be busy. Yesterday, you might have heard about where some of our folks were at the Colorado Oil and Gas Commission. But Dan Gibbs, the newly appointed DNR director, is here. And some of you may already know him from his work. So I'm going to give him a couple minutes to introduce himself. And also our Attorney General, Phil Weiser, is here. And so we are so fortunate to have both of them here at the same time. To have Phil here and Dan here, and it's just this really shows how exciting these times are. And so, Dan, I'm going to just let you take a couple minutes, introduce yourself. People want to know how you got here. So, and same for you, Phil.
Great. Thank you, Becky. And I'm Dan Gibbs. I think I've been on the job for maybe 7 days now as a new director of Department of Natural Resources, and I'm really excited to be here. I live in Breckenridge with my wife and two very young kids. So I'm planning on commuting for the most part, but I'll be down in Denver, during the week. And as you all know, there are statewide meetings all the time, so I'll be on the road often. Let's see. I want to say maybe 4 Tuesdays ago, I was getting ready to head to my office to get sworn in for my third term as a county commissioner. I actually had my little boy Tate, who's 18 months old, in one hand, and my daughter holding her hand, and we're getting ready to head out the door at 8:10, and I'm supposed to be sworn in at 8:30 when a name popped up on my cell phone that said Jared Pullis. So I answered, and he said, Dan, on behalf of the great state of Colorado, I'd like to offer you the job of Executive Director of the Department of Natural Resources. Will you accept? And of course I accepted, and it's really been busy, ever since. I resigned my post as a county commissioner about 1 week after that, and started as the DNR job. And really look forward to working with you all. My background before I was a county commissioner, I served in the state legislature. I was in the state senate, representing Senate District 16. That included Summit, Grand, Gilpin, Clear Creek, Western Jefferson County, and Western Boulder County. And then before that, I was a state representative for House District 56, and that was Summit, Eagle, and Lake. And then before that, I was a congressional staffer. I was in D.C. for about 3.5 years, working for then Congressman Mark Udall, and then was his Western Slope director. But water is near and dear to my heart. I grew up just in Gunnison, just west of off Highway 50. So I'm an avid angler, sportsman. I'm a former rafting guide. So even though I didn't grow up on a farm or ranch, I really appreciate the importance of water in the state. I'm also an avid backcountry skier, so I look at snow reports hourly at times. So again, I'm really happy to be here and look forward to working with you all.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate that. Thanks. Bill.
It's a real honor to be here. Let me start by appreciating, I know, something that Russ George said yesterday about how this community works together. And what I can tell you, because I get to work on a lot of issues, but the culture in which people here collaborate and work to solve problems is the essence of what Colorado's about. In fact, I'd even go so far as to say Russ George is what the essence of Colorado's about. And at my investiture, I talked about one of the highlights of my experience in the trail, which is in Craig, Colorado. Many people here know T. Wright, who's a rancher in Moffett. Yes, and but not as many people probably know Joanne Baxter, who is the longtime chair of the Moffat County Dems, a teacher, and I was at dinner with both of them and said, who is your most favorite political leader? And they both said Russ George. And that said something about Russ and about Colorado. And as I got to know water, the issue, and the community, Russ has been an incredible guide to me. And I don't think there's a more important issue that we in Colorado face, and there's not a more constructive set of institutions than the one we have here in Colorado. By contrast, other issues, you mentioned Dan's work on oil and gas. You can talk about a range of challenges. We don't necessarily have a community of practitioners working together to solve hard problems in the right way. And I am an ex officio member of this body. I take that role very seriously. I will be here as much as I can. Unfortunately, it won't be for all the time, but it's something I'll be getting constantly briefed on and here for all of you every single way I can. Also, many of you have know Amy, who is the counsel to the board. And then there's a whole team of people in the AG's office. We've got an A team in this area who will continue to staff the board and the important work. So I'm excited to work with all of you and know that you are also inspiring and guiding how we do other work here in Colorado.
All right. Thanks, Phil. Those are kind words. And we're excited to have you both.
Oh, sorry. I was just prompted that I didn't say anything about me. I'm happy to. I'd rather talk about Russ, actually, but I will say this. I came to Colorado after law school to clerk for a judge, David E. Bell. I grew up back east, and I didn't know from Colorado. And like what I talked about the spirit of this group, what really struck me about Colorado is that, in general, people in Colorado root for each other to succeed. And I've been very involved in the entrepreneurial community here, and that is a characteristic that has impressed me. That's actually how I got to meet Jared Polis around 2000. I've spent the last 20 years at CU Boulder as a law professor and dean, taking time to be involved in public affairs, different public service work, as well as taking a leave of absence to work for President Obama in the Justice Department, the White House. And I've always wanted to be serving the best of my ability. When this election came around, I thought there might be a chance to serve by being Colorado's Attorney General, and tried this experiment of putting myself out there, and again, as Russ said, to really work on being your best authentic self. And one thing that was great about being a candidate was how much I learned about the state. We traveled all across the state, me and my family. I've got two kids a bit older than Dan's. I met Dan's kids at the County Assembly in Summit. My daughter Aviva's a freshman in high school, and my son Sammy is in 5th grade. And they've learned a lot about water on this trip. So.
All right. Thanks, Phil. And we are a body that collaborates a lot and works together. One of the interesting things was, we're supposed to be roughly equal Republicans and Democrats. And when I got here, I couldn't tell who was who. And it was just because we all work towards the same goal, and that is for Colorado and its water supply. So that's what I like about this board and what I like being a part of it. So it's good to have you both here. All right, on with our agenda item. The infamous Russ George is going to give us the Colorado River Report.
Only because the Colorado River Basin comes first in the alphabet do I start each of these. And perhaps, Mr. Chairman, in all fairness, since you all have had to tolerate me for so many years, you ought to just reverse the order more frequently. And that way, my jokes can change according to the things you say before I talk. So, no doubt. Well, certainly, I'll be the one of many to say to you, Dan, thank you for answering the question from the governor correctly. And of course, you were on the spot, and that's, I guess, the way governors like to work. We are truly delighted that you're willing to take on yet another obligation of service to the people of Colorado. And if I haven't said this to you before, I'll say it now. You're going to really enjoy working with this group. We believe we have the best staff of any state agency anywhere. And they make all of us look really good, and we like that. And Mr. Chairman, the politics, the partisan politics stops at this door by everybody's choice, and I've always liked that. It really makes far better work for all of us, and I'm sure that's going to continue. So welcome. You've got your hands full for sure. We'll try not to add to your burdens by giving you unsolvable problems. We'll try pretty hard to present solutions. But of course, we all know the water business always is troublesome, but these days seems to be that the problems are harder than ever. So anyway, welcome, and we look forward to many good times. Mr. Attorney General, I think I warned you that you were a member of this body, and I am so delighted to see you sitting here. And thank you for your kind remarks. If I didn't know better, I'd say you were making all that up, but it's nice for you to say that sort of thing. These people have had to put up with me all these years, so they're not impressed by that. And I know we won't see you every day, but we will see Amy every day. We're delighted. Where did she wander to? Because we hadn't had a chance to say too much, because today is the Attorney General's day, and so she hasn't even had a chance to defend herself yet. But the two of you will have the main focus, I think, of today's work when we get to the Attorney General's report. So.
And if I can, thank you for serving on my transition team and helping recruit Amy.
It was my pleasure and honor for sure. Thank you. So good work ahead for all of us. So let me get on with my report. And I just said something about agriculture. Had Kate Greenberg been able to come back, she was here with us for a while yesterday. And I don't want to miss an opportunity here to say, and what I would have said for her, but it's for everybody, and maybe she's listening on the air, that this body really gets it, that what agriculture means to the state of Colorado. And I don't think we make a decision any time without acknowledging the importance that ag and ag water and the people who are in the ag industry and on the farms and the ranches, what all that means. And so we've certainly benefited from her successors, the commissioners of agriculture, who've been coming to this body for a long time, and I've been able to know many of them over the years. And so there's a great tradition that she now gets to add to, and it's really critical now because the Colorado Water Plan has been elevated to the top focus for so much of what we do. And you remember from the beginning that we said this is for protection of agriculture and how the rest of us fit into that. And so it'll be good to have her as part of this body too. So to the regular work. I got an update. The Colorado Basin Roundtable met yesterday on its regular schedule, so that normally I would have been able to attend there and participate in their good work, but of course couldn't. So I did get a report from Jim Pokrant, their chair. And so I'll just give a quick report about their work yesterday, and it doesn't surprise me that most of their time was spent talking about demand management. And so they've put together a work group, about a dozen of their regular members, and Jim tells me, and it's a cross-section segment of the members. It's just not the ones who might usually stand up and say, I'll volunteer. But there's an effort to get the whole picture in the conversation, which is exactly correct. And they did get a volunteer for a committee chairman, and I understand she's already handing out homework reading assignments, which probably would have to happen because, as we know, there's a lot of detail that needs to be learned pretty fast about this new concept of demand management and how we're going to make it work here. It's how we've been doing it, and it appears that that's the right way for the Basin Roundtable to do it. They also spent the day talking about it, which is just right, because you've got to begin to feel out where this fits in each basin. And Jim tells me that he thinks this is going on in all of the roundtables, particularly all of the Western Slope roundtables, doing the very same thing. Let's learn, let's figure out what this means. But as importantly, Jim tells me there's quite a lot of intention and preparation for this conversation to lift up from each roundtable into the 4 Western Slope Basin roundtables that meet regularly, as you know, I think once or twice a year. And they have a meeting set for May, when all of the 4 Western Slope Basin roundtables meet, and this will be probably their main, if not only, agenda item. And they're going to try to do 2 things. Can we be a unified force on the principles that we're going to work on to move demand management forward, and where we can't necessarily be the same because our factors, circumstances are different? Can we understand each other's differences and then work them into a unified plan? Well, how brilliant is that? I mean, I'm delighted to hear, because that's exactly what we need, of course, to move demand management up. Because remember, this is one of the first times many of us have worked on an issue that all 7 Colorado River states are headed the same direction at the same time with the same goal. So Basin roundtables are going to march together, and then all of the roundtables will come together, as we know, in September. And I'll bet that's also the main subject on the agenda there. And so that's great to look forward to. Then the last thing that the Basin Roundtable and its chairman asked me to say to you folks is, for heaven's sake, keep the money coming. Particularly the construction fund and the choices that are being made in budget time. Just a reminder from folks at home that there's a lot of good work that goes on, and the money that we move along in grants and loans is extremely valuable to them and all of us. So I think that's all the work I want to do. And it just wouldn't be fair for me to finish without having our moment in the Old Farmer's Almanac. Now, Dan and Phil don't know, probably. You have your own copy for the first time in history, maybe. I've been harassing everyone for years now with the Old Farmer's Almanac, and the fact that we really don't need to study as hard as we do or work as hard as we do, because the truth is already printed for us, and it's been going on that way since, it says on here somewhere, a couple hundred years. Oh yes, since 1792, there we are. So what to worry, right? So anyway, I've always kept you informed of the truth of everything, and I wanted to do that one last time. But I just wanted to be sure that I taught you how to use the best book in your library so that you can read it for yourself. And so somebody said, well, I have to tell the secret of what page am I working from. So I will do that. Page 97 is the first page you want to look at. And I'll just quickly say, you don't have to read it. I can inform you by looking at the pictures, which is a good way to do things. We are still in the cold and wet, mild and snowy, and warm and dry center of the country. And I can tell you that's the truth. So, of course, I trust the information. What's not as encouraging is if you look at the red part of summer of 2019, it's hot and dry. So that's what this summer is going to look like. So that's what the point I made yesterday. You can look at this beautiful snowstorm we had, but don't forget that summer does come, and we are still in a drought, like it or not. So anyway, that's as much as I can do in forecasting from Rifle, Colorado. Thank you.
Thank you, Director George. Are there any questions for Director George about the Farmer's Almanac or anything? No? Okay. We'll continue on with the San Juan, San Miguel, Dolores River Basin Report. Director Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to start out by welcoming the new members to the table. I'm very excited to work with all of you. And Dan, we'll have to find a time to get out on the river sometime together. I'm a kayaker. So I also wanted to thank the outgoing members for their service. I deeply appreciated the time that I had serving with the members that just concluded their service. And so if they're listening, just wanted to thank them. I wanted to congratulate Anna on her new position and Heinz on his retirement. So thank you both and look forward to working with you, Anna, in your new position. And I know we talked yesterday about the permanent radar work, but just wanted to reiterate my thanks to the staff for their work on that. Doing a project of that scale and the time frame that we have been working on it is no easy feat. And it was no easy feat to get the temporary radar installed in the 17-day time frame that we did it. So we see that commitment from the staff in our area and really appreciate it. So Russ, as Director George, is always really hard to follow on forecasting or snow reporting. So, you know, for the benefit of the new members at the table, you know, earlier in 2018, the reporting out of the southwest part of the state was pretty dire. We were in sort of the worst classification of drought. Producers were hurting, our reservoirs were dropping. Really not a good year to be reporting on water issues. We have been slowly creeping up. We were sort of hanging out in the 60 to 70% of average, which was very concerning given the reservoir levels in our part of the state. We're now creeping up where across our basins we're at 90% of average, but we still need more snow. And I think a lot of the reservoir managers are still looking at whether they can recover and how much they can recover this year. Parts of my basin are starting to come out of that exceptional drought classification into extreme drought. But again, you know, the drought is not over. The concerns about water in the Southwest are not over right now. And the fact that we're forecasted to head into another hot summer still concerns me from a water supply standpoint. So the Basin Roundtable has had a couple of meetings since we last met. Our Colorado River Committee met in December. And then at the January Roundtable meeting, we started off the afternoon with a workshop on Colorado River issues. Wanted to thank Brent and Megan for their participation in that. And it was, I really liked the format of how that meeting was set up. It was really set up in sort of a question and answer format. So we were able to take questions that had come out of our roundtable committee and ask them to Brent. And I know he had some assistance from the AG's office as well. So it was really useful for folks in our basin to be able to start engaging and asking questions and getting answers to some of their big questions about the drought contingency plan and demand management in the basin. That also took up a lot of time at our Basin Roundtable meeting. I think Director George was right. I think all of the roundtables are really thinking about Colorado River issues in detail and really getting everyone on the roundtable up to speed, given that we've got diverse representation on the roundtable. We also saw a pretty broad mix of WSRF applications, a couple related to the 416 fire, and I wanted to highlight one of them. I think we should be seeing it at the March meeting, but there's an irrigation ditch off the Animas River that essentially lies between the burn scar and the people that live below the burn scar. And this ditch really stepped up during the fire. It was providing water to the firefighting effort. And they have had a lot of maintenance and sedimentation issues in their ditch. And so when this application comes in, just know that this ditch is actually the first line of defense for those communities sitting underneath it, but it's also an important provider of irrigation water. And I really do see that as an area where we have some capacity to help with the post-fire recovery. So I'm excited to see that application come forward next time. We also saw a Forest to Faucets application, which is an education program that's important in our area, a municipal water application, and then some additional support for one of our stream management planning processes. So I wanted to touch on something that happened at the Colorado River Water Users Association that might have been a little bit lost in the sort of announcements that came out from Reclamation on the drought contingency plan. But the 10 Tribes Partnership and Reclamation also released a tribal water study, which was a follow-up to the 2012 basin-wide study. I would really encourage members of the board to take a look at it. You don't have to read the entire study. There's specific chapters on our 2 tribes in Colorado, but really a fine piece of work and a really great resource if you've sort of wondered what the tribe's water rights look like in Colorado. The chapters for the 2 Colorado tribes are very nicely done. We've had a lot of work on stream management planning efforts around the basin. The Upper San Juan Watershed Enhancement Partnership had their first public-facing meeting. So there's been a steering committee that's been meeting for several months. We had our first public meeting earlier in January. Had one of the best sort of steering committee stakeholder panels that I've seen, a really broad representation from municipal water suppliers, the agricultural community, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, to kick off the sort of public outreach effort. And after that, there was a great breakout session with different geographies where people were able to self-select and go to tables and talk about which issues they might want to talk about in different segments of the Upper San Juan. On the Mancos, the results of some of the agricultural water modeling were presented in December, and we anticipate more work to move forward in 2019. And then on the San Miguel, we've been working on funding for the stakeholder process. And last week, there was a really great workshop in NUCLA, and Director Dutton came and spoke to us. But it was a really good opportunity for the agricultural community in NUCLA and Natarita to hear about stream management planning and what is going to be coming into their basin. So I think I'll leave my report at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Hawkins. Any questions for Director Hawkins? All right. We'll continue on with the Gunnison River report. Director Anderson.
Thank you, Chairman Yon, and I would certainly echo Director George and Hawkins' comments and welcome to the new faces here. This group is like nothing I ever envisioned when I applied for the job, and I certainly enjoy it, and I think you will find that going forward. There have been 2 Gunnison Basin Roundtable meetings since we were last together. In the November meeting, the Roundtable passed a resolution to support our policy statement on demand management. That again was the hot topic at our January meeting. Demand management. The sense I gathered from the members of the roundtable was they're very interested in seeing the methodology to go forward with the demand management program. How is that going to work through the process? and also what kind of a schedule we're on for developing a demand management program. They're also, the Basin Roundtable approved 7 water reserve fund grants. They will be brought to this table at our next meeting, totaling some $883,000. One of them kind of sticks out. We've got another grant request for a Forest Service toilet. I was assured that this would be the last time that we have to go to those measures to fix problems in our national forest. The Nellie Creek grant we offered, that's come to pass and cleaned up a mess in Colorado's Alpine that desperately needed to happen. The snowpack in the Gunnison is in the 60% of the seasonal mean. Uncompahgre is almost 60%. Paonia is looking good again. And actually the snowpack in both those drainages feeding Paonia and Ridgeway exceeds anything we saw a year ago. If I learned anything operating the Uncompahgre project last year, is we really depend on that Uncompahgre for water to feed that project. The Gunnison Tunnel simply won't pack enough water to supply our project. I have some visuals here. This is a picture of the caretaker's house at Taylor Dam in 2017. This is the way it looked a year ago. And this is the way it looks this year, although not as good as 2017. Certainly an improvement over that. One of the things that I was amazed at when I assumed managing the Uncompahgre project was I kind of had the attitude that we'll shut this water off and everybody can catch a break and relax some. And in 2016, we shut the water out, and 2 weeks later, I was ready to turn it back in, because that really is the time when it's all hands on deck to fix things up. And this winter, I thought I'd just show you a few pictures of the work that we're undertaking. This is the terminus of the South Canal. There's a head gate there that we're repairing. This head gate is situated there so that we can pressure up the West Canal flume, which here you can see a picture of it. This flumes the water across the Uncompahgre River to feed, which is essentially the Highline Canal on the west side of the project. We're in a process of replacing timbered supports for that flume that essentially the flume hangs on with C-channel purlins. Here's a picture of the completed project. This had been an ongoing maintenance problem over the years with using that wood. It deteriorating way sooner than anybody thought, and going with metal. I certainly won't have to worry about in my lifetime, and that might be said for some of my grandchildren too. This is a picture of an intake structure we poured on the CEC The last couple of years with a joint venture with Montrose County, we've been able to pipe some of our laterals that were essentially the same as the borrowed ditch on county roads. It's worked out real well. The county buys the material and we install it and solved our issues plus eliminated safety hazards in the community. This is a picture of getting ready to install the intake structure for the GB lateral piping project this winter. This is financed with RCPP funds, which has been some difficult to jump through all the hoops required by the NRCS to acquire this funding. We did get the go ahead in December and got started right away. We have completed this intake structure. We got some pictures so you can just kind of follow the progress. There's forming up for the footing for this structure, pouring the footing. This is pouring the intake side of the structure. There's the completed structure before it was backfilled. Here we've installed the intake punch plates and also the checking system for it. There's a shot of the final structure. I am continually impressed with the employees of the project. They ride ditch in the summertime and then they become a pretty good construction crew in the wintertime. Here we've started laying the 30-inch PVC pipe right at that structure. Right now we have about 5,000 foot of pipe in on the upper end of the GB lateral and about 5,000 on the lower end. We caught our pipe suppliers, so I haven't visited with the project, but we were supposed to receive some more pipe so we can get back on it now. We still haven't received any funds for the project. We have 2 draws in. Let me assure you, the association is not in a position to bankroll this $1.3 million project, and I'm very hopeful that with the government going back to work, we'll receive those funds. That concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Anderson. Any questions for Director Anderson? All right. Next, North Platte, Director Trick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I have a couple of slides here, so I'll wait for those to get loaded. But while that is occurring, just wanted to echo the others' comments and welcome the new faces to the board. I really look forward to working with you all, and I think you'll find that this is a great group and we do a lot of great things for Colorado. So welcome. And thank you, Director George, for my copy of the Farmer's Almanac. I will peruse it tonight, and I see it also has lots of other interesting things within it other than weather-related things, so appreciate that. And I'm going to keep my actual comments short because I have a couple short videos to show you guys today. But the first thing I wanted to show was the SNOTEL map. I don't think it would be a basin report if one of us didn't show this map. So that is as of yesterday. And as you can see, lots of blues, greens on the map, and we like to see that. So I don't know if you can see that very closely, but I think it said we were 108% statewide. I believe that's correct. Yes. So my next update, I just wanted to share and highlight a couple of things that are happening in the basin right now. It's not really that often that the North Park and North Platte Basin can call itself an innovator or being the first in the state to do things or to try things first before anybody else does. But we have actually two different really innovative projects that are going on currently. And the first one is the town of Walden solar array. And this was installed actually back in October of 2018. And it wasn't a WSRA project, but it was funded through the Colorado Energy Office and a DOLA grant of $200,000. And it was also matched with some town of Walden money to install this solar array, which will provide 100% of electricity needed to run the water treatment plant. And it's on one of the ponds there near the water treatment plant. You probably can't read that text there, but it's floating on one of the holding ponds that's associated with the treatment plant. And the reason this is a really interesting project is because it's the only one that's been done in Colorado to date, and it's only the fifth of its kind to have been done in the United States. And so I have a short video to show you in the next slide that will basically give the background on the project and highlight some of the unique and neat things about it. It's Taylor Lewis speaking about how the project came about. So. If the video works.
Taylor Lewis from the Colorado Energy Office. All right, let's go. So what do you get when you combine a bunch of engineered plastic floats and solar photovoltaic modules? Well, photovoltaics. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about Colorado's first system and how floating solar might help the state save water. That's right, water. But first, a little background on why a program engineer at the Colorado Energy Office is thinking about water conservation. Pretty early in this role, I was partnered with Boulder-based Western Resource Advocates to work on a project that intended to help the Colorado Energy Office implement more water efficiency projects through the Energy Performance Contracting Program. This project was a result of the 2015 Colorado Water Plan, a plan which intends to lay out a framework for the state to address future potential water shortages here in Colorado. Water shortages that will result from an increase in population and the increasing municipal, energy, and agricultural loads that Colorado's sustained growth will require. So any effort to save water seemed like something I should pursue. So you might be wondering, can the state really save that much water? Or maybe you're just sitting there thinking, when's this guy going to talk about floating solar? Well, that's where the town of Walden comes in. Where's Walden, you ask? Well, one day, Walden called me and they said they wanted to do a performance contract. They said they wanted solar energy to be a part of that project. But the town of Walden doesn't own many buildings, they don't have much rooftop space, and they don't own any land. So when Walden and their energy service company partner suggested floating the solar, I knew this was an opportunity the Energy Office had to be involved in. So I started to share the concept. And in true Colorado fashion, I got asked, what about the fish? Along with a variety of environmental concerns in every conversation. Don't worry, so far the studies show there might actually be some benefits to the ecosystems these systems are installed in. Benefits like shade and localized cooler temperatures for the trout. The systems might reduce the solar availability which algal blooms require to grow. And the floats might actually provide space for aquatic mammals reptiles, and birds to eat and rest. Speaking of environment, us Coloradans know that our elevation comes with a lot of sun. There's a lot of man-made dams and reservoirs to store water in the arid climate that we have. An arid climate that, when combined with that sun, results in evaporation. A lot of evaporation, it turns out. Between 20 and 90 inches of water evaporates off our bodies of water every year. Thinking about this evaporation reminded me of some stories I'd heard from Los Angeles, where the city covered 4 of their reservoirs with hundreds of millions of black plastic balls and claimed millions of gallons of water savings. Could floating solar do something similar for Colorado? And if so, and we were trapping that water vapor under solar panels, and it was helping to cool the panels, would those panels operate more efficiently while helping the state keep water in our reservoirs? Well, while I was having these conversations, it didn't take long for a catchy phrase like water energy nexus to show up. But it's definitely a more interesting application of the term than, say, cooling towers at your coal-fired plant or fracking wastewater. So while I was talking about fish and solar module efficiency and evaporation, the town of Walden and their partners had identified a pond to be the site of Colorado's first floating solar array. And when I say partners, I mean partners. This being the first in the state and one of only 5 in the US, this project was a great example of a dedicated and diverse team coming together to quickly implement an innovative technology. After 13 months of development, design, and construction, Walden's the proud owner of a 75 kW floating solar PV array with the potential to offset the usage of their water treatment plant. Colorado has a reputation of being a leader in energy efficiency and renewable energy, and working on this project really showed me that it's communities like Walden and their partners that are the ones helping to keep Colorado in the forefront of these efforts. That said, the Energy Office would like to keep this momentum going, and we have plans to conduct a statewide analysis to really determine how many bodies of water we could cover and what benefit that might have for the state of Colorado for both its energy and water goals. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. So as you can see, it's pretty exciting for us to be able to do something cool like that. And I think it also just highlights maybe one of the benefits of a smaller area is that you can get things done fast with a lot of partners. And like he said, it didn't take them very long to get all of that even installed and done and online. So, and also the Colorado Department of Energy and the National Renewable Energy Lab will be monitoring this for 3 years. If it works, they want to, as mentioned in the video, they want to try to explore it in other areas of the state. So we're excited to see how that turns out. And the second project I just wanted to quickly mention again that Director Mitchell covered yesterday is the weather mod that we're now doing up there in Jackson County. We have the aerial cloud seeding program going on. They were actually supposed to have a flight on Sunday night, but I was told because of safety reasons in Cheyenne, they couldn't do the flight on Sunday. So I had hoped to give you an update that they did their first flight, but I don't believe it has occurred to date yet. And I'll just skip the next video. This was the 9 News. It's a minute long, but it was the 9 News feature on this. So if you guys want to watch that, go ahead and just YouTube it. And also, as far as weather mod and cloud seeding, I happened upon a really interesting NPR story that discussed the history of weather mod back to the 40s and how they first discovered that silver iodide worked to seed clouds. And so if you're interested in that, it's an audio file that you can find online, but it's called Owning the Clouds by Stephen Jackson. And it's a pretty interesting historical piece on weather mod and cloud seeding. So that's all I wanted to share. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you. Director Trick. Any questions? Director Hawkins.
Well, I was joking with Director Goebel this morning. We got to ride down in the elevator with one of the cutest puppies I've ever seen. And I thought that might be the highlight of the day, but that report on the intersection between solar energy and water just outdid it. So you beat the puppy.
Thank you. I'm glad to know that beat out a puppy. That's really hard to do. So thank you, Director Hawkins.
That makes me really feel bad about not playing Jonathan Hernandez's puppy video yesterday. I didn't know it'd be the highlight of your day. So thanks, Director Trick. Any other questions? The North Platte is rocking it there, doing a lot of things. That's exciting. So now I have to follow that. South Platte Basin. As you know, this is a time during the winter where we store water in our reservoirs, especially the Plains reservoirs out where I live. And the good news is that the reservoirs are all to their winter fill, except for North Sterling Reservoir, which takes us most of the winter to fill. But we've had good running conditions, so we'll probably be full in the next couple of weeks to our winter fill. So we'll have water running out of the state because we have no more buckets to store it in. But just to always keep reminding you of how important return flows are, this year was an exceptional year for return flows. At Kersey, which is approximately 180 miles from the state line, river miles, Riverside Reservoir and Empire Reservoir dried the river. So they dry the river in the wintertime, and there was about 600 CFS that they were taking constantly. But we're further downstream. We're about 80 to 100 miles downstream of there. And there was 400 CFS that returns back to the river that we were able to divert. And we dried the river completely there. And Julesburg Reservoir is downstream of us, probably just 30 miles upstream from the state line. And there was plenty of water for them to fill their reservoirs. So it was just an exceptional year for return flows. And that just goes to show you how much we depend on those return flows and how I enjoy being in Denver, where I can flush the toilets twice and get us a little extra water. But one of the things that we're doing in the roundtable is we had our elections and we elected Garrett Vara again for our president, our chairman of the roundtable. He's doing a really good job. We also have commissioned some people today to be in Greeley at the Colorado Farm Show, part of our educational and outreach program. And actually, Alex Funk from the CWCB was supposed to be there today to give a report on the statewide water supply plan initiative update. But he had duties here, so it took two other people, Greg Johnson and Russ Sands, to fill in for him there. So they're at the Greeley Farm Show talking about some of the things going on in the state with regards to water. Also from our roundtable, we have Jeffrey Boring, who is head of our funds on the South Platte Basin Roundtable. He's going to be talking today at the Greeley Farm Show about funding opportunities for people. So we're trying to get the word out that there are things out there that the CWCB does that apply to people, especially in the ag sector. And we also have Joe Frank and Sean Cronin, Sean was here yesterday. They're going to be at the Greeley Farm Show talking about our regional project with which the CWCB, we've funded some money for that, I believe in the November meeting. And so we're almost under contract. I think by the middle of February, we'll be under contract for that study. And so it's a continuation of the South Platte storage study and some other studies that we're doing that we did independently. So we're pretty excited to see what that might lead to. We asked people to sign up and see if they wanted to be part of this regional project. And so far we've had 64 people sign up to be part of this project going forward. So it's kind of cumbersome, but there's a lot of excitement on what we might be able to do with a regional type project in the South Platte Basin. So, and that includes the Metro, which Director Wells is part of, and the South Platte Basins, because we are connected over here. So just to kind of finish off, I was able to attend a tour of the Lower Colorado Basin. December 2nd through the 5th with the Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District. So I just was going to show a few pictures from that. It was a lot of information, so I don't remember everything I learned that day, but we started in Las Vegas. So we went there on a Sunday night, but I really didn't do anything. I just took this picture and went to bed. So that was my extent of Las Vegas. But we did, in Las Vegas, we heard from John Etzminger with the Southern Nevada Water Authority, and he talked about their tunneling project, which goes under Lake Mead, 26-foot diameter piping and pump plant that brings water from Lake Mead to Nevada, so they can access Lake Mead when no one else can. So it's and it's $650 million. That portion of it is $650 million project. And that's one thing I learned from going throughout the lower basin is there are a lot of big projects and a lot of money has been spent. You know, we talk about things that we need to do in Colorado. Boy, they're doing them in Nevada and California, big projects. And so it's not that we can't do it, it's whether we have the desire to do those kind of things. So our first stop was Lake Havasu. And so a lot of this was new for me, but this is the Central Arizona projects, the beginning of it at the Mark Wilmer pumping plant. And I don't have a lot of pictures because I'm not a good picture taker anyway. But so the pumping plant, this is where it starts on the Central Arizona aqueduct that is 336 miles long that takes water to Phoenix and Tucson. That's the intake to the pumping plant there. We move, oh, that's me by a cactus, just so you can, proving that I was actually there. Here is the Whitsett pumping plant, and this is for the Metropolitan District. This was built in 1939, and it's the beginning of a 242-mile aqueduct that takes water to Southern California. So some big projects that took place a long time ago. The Central Arizona project, of course, was, I think, finished in the late 80s or early 90s. So this was a lot sooner than that. But they both pull from Lake Havasu. We stayed all night near here. This is the beginning of the pumping plant, the Whitsett pumping plant. And we stayed near there. Another picture inside the pumping plant. We actually got to go in there. There was a tarantula outside. I took a picture of that. It's kind of fuzzy. But the next day we stayed at Gene Camp overnight, which is the Metropolitan District's, because they're so spread out, they have a place there like a hotel that people can stay. And so this is near there, one of their siphons that take it over to another pumping plant. There's 5 pumping plants, and I think there's 1,600 feet in elevation that they pump it. And then they pump it into these reservoirs, and then they let it gravity flow, and then they pump it back up and let it gravity flow. So it's just an interesting system. This is, well, you can see James was on the tour there as well. But this is at Copper Basin Reservoir, 24,900 acre-foot reservoir. This dam is 184 feet tall, and the crest is 250 feet. But it's just one of their places where they pump into a reservoir and then they gravity feed out of there and continue on down the aqueduct. This was part of the aqueduct here. You can see the sign that says no trespassing, penalty $1,000. If you go around the corner, the penalty is only $500 on the other side of the fence, so that's where I jumped in. This is the Palo Verde Irrigation District, some of their cotton fields. A lot of these, it was such a rapid tour. These are out of the bus taking pictures as we flew through the whole tour, but it was interesting, and we had people on the bus telling us about all these things. We did stop for lunch here in the Palo Verde Irrigation District, which is 100,000 acres of irrigated land, and they also have a deal with the Met District to supply them with water. And that was done in the early 2000s, I believe, that they signed that deal. Since then, the Metropolitan District has purchased a lot of the land in the Palo Verde Irrigation District. And so they're able to take a little bit more water over there. But the interesting thing was, after this deal kind of took place, a lot of farmers began to sell some of their properties, and some of the bigger farmers brought it up. And one of the farmers here told me that 90% of the money that comes to the Palo Verde Irrigation District from the Metropolitan District is distributed between 10 farmers. So it's kind of consolidated into big farming in that area. So it's unfortunate, but that's the way things are happening in that area. We also went to the Imperial Valley Irrigation District that same day, so there was a lot of driving. We talked to some of the Imperial Valley Irrigation District officials on the bus, and then we went to the Sunny Bono National Wildlife Refuge, which overlooks the Salton Sea. And the Salton Sea was interesting to me because just as we on the South Platte depend on return flows, the Salton Sea depends on return flows from the Imperial Valley Irrigation District, which as they increase their efficiency and they lease water to the Metropolitan District has decreased, which results in lowering of the Salton Sea, which increases the salt levels in the Salton Sea. And there's always, everything that you do, even whether it's on the South Platte or in the Imperial Valley Irrigation District or anywhere, sometimes when you think it's a really good idea, there are consequences to those things that you do. So you just have to keep that in mind. And so this is one of the results of that, is the Salton Sea is becoming more and more difficult to deal with. We were supposed to take a boat tour. We took a boat tour on the Copper Basin Reservoir, but we were supposed to take one on this day, which it was raining in Southern California on December 4th. So we weren't able to get on this reservoir. This is a fairly new reservoir, 810,000 acre-foot reservoir, and it's a 6-month emergency supply for 19 million people. And so it's a large reservoir, which it was kind of mountains on 3 sides, and they are on 2 sides, and they dammed off the edges. So it's kind of an interesting reservoir. They built a reservoir and pump water up to it. I did my own snow survey last night, and that's on top of my pickup. I took my surveying rod, and so this is the South Platte Basin snow survey. About 8 inches is what we have. Anyway, right here in Westminster. But the snow in the South Platte Basin is good, not as good as Director Goebel's, but is 115% of normal. So that ends my report. Any questions? All right, thank you very much. Now the Arkansas River Basin, Director Goebel.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I guess all that living right we're doing in the Arkansas is finally paying off. We won't talk about the last couple of years, but. So first off, I'd also like to congratulate Directors Gibbs, Greenberg, Beatty, and Mr. Weiser on their new positions and welcome them to this board. Look forward to working with all of you and to implement our water plan. So welcome aboard. I'd also like to thank Directors Randall, Brown, Chartrand, and Broscheid, as well as Dr. Stolt for their service to this board and to the state of Colorado. It was a pleasure working with all of them. Another congratulations to Anna Moss on her promotion to Chief Operating Officer. I have no doubt that she'll continue to do great things in that role as well. And congratulations to Heinz on your retirement, wherever you're hiding back there. Hopefully you'll have a lot of sunny days on the golf course, but intermixed with a lot of rain and snow too. I'd also like to thank Director George for my almanac. I read in it that their overall accuracy rate in forecasting temperature last winter was 83%, which is actually pretty good. But whenever you say it's going to be hot or cold, I guess you're pretty accurate. I also learned that according to the moon signs that today is the best day to straighten your hair and dehydrate your fruit. So also good info. A little more serious, Arkansas Basin Roundtable met 3 weeks ago in La Junta, where 2 water supply reserve fund grant requests were approved and letters of support were given for 3 water plan grant requests. There was also a large discussion on ARWIC, which is the Arkansas River Watershed Collaborative. This is a nonprofit group that was set up in 2013 by the Roundtable to implement our watershed health projects in the Arkansas Basin. It initially focused on post-fire recovery, but then began to implement projects throughout the basin, including wildfire risk reduction, water quality, and soil health. Carol E. Carius and her company, Coalitions and Collaboratives, has been performing most of the work so far for RWIC, but the workload has grown to the point where the RWIC board, which is also the executive committee of the roundtable, has decided to hire a full-time executive director. This person, in addition to managing their projects and seeking additional grant funding, would also pursue general operating funding commitments from local jurisdictional entities. So they'll be seeking to try to get everyday money to write grants and operate that entity. So a hiring committee has been set up that is developing a job posting, and we'll work with the roundtable to hire this position. And like Director Ryan mentioned yesterday in his report, Colorado and Kansas have finalized an agreement for a new source of water for the John Martin Reservoir Fish and Wildlife Permanent Pool. This will provide water in the reservoir that will remain when levels drop to help maintain the fish and wildlife population. And I was speaking with the state park director, and they told me that there's over 500 species that visit this state park every year. So pretty incredible. And once this agreement is finalized, which will hopefully happen in the next month or so, the attention will turn to the proposed John Martin Reservoir multi-purpose account. Colorado has proposed a new 40,000 acre-foot account that would store water for a variety of 10 different entities, including 2 cities, 3 well augmentation groups, 3 water conservancy districts, and an energy company. And the great thing about this new account is that no construction would be required, as there's almost always adequate storage available in this reservoir to handle this proposed new account. And Kansas is committed to continuing the discussions on this account during 2019, so we're looking forward to that. A quick update on hydrology in the basin. Although the drought monitor shows that about half of the Arkansas Basin is still in drought conditions as of yesterday, and as you saw on the map earlier, the snowpack in the basin is sitting at 131% of median, which is more than double where we were this time last year. So we're very fortunate for that. Snowpack is particularly high in the southern part of the basin, with the Episcopal and Purgatory watersheds currently sitting above 150% of the median, which we haven't seen for quite a few years. And we're hoping that this El Nino year will keep them at those levels continuing into the spring. And that will conclude my report.
Thank you, Director Goebel. Any questions for Director Goebel? All right. We'll move on to the City and County of Denver. Director Wells.
Thank you, Director Yon. I want to add to my greetings to the newly installed members of this board and the cabinet and the Attorney General's office. As others have said, the great thing about working in water is that it really isn't partisan at all. It has its divisions, some of which kind of get on my nerves from time to time. But generally speaking, people try to do the best thing for the state of Colorado. And it's always wonderful to come to these meetings where no matter where we're from, we manage to work out the best thing for the state as a whole. It's been very gratifying to serve. And as new people come in, it's the same way. It just keeps going with this really concept of public service to the state, which is a privilege to be able to participate. I wanted to thank Director George for the Farmer's Almanac. For years, you probably guessed that Director George has given us the predictions from the Farmer's Almanac. What he failed to share, however, as I'm glancing through it, is the advertisements, which apparently you can solve any ailment you might have with Magnalite cream. Anyway, it's very interesting. I was trying to figure out, is this the 1909 advertisement or not? But it mentioned Walgreens and Walmart, so I thought, oh dear, it's up to date. So, anyway, it's very entertaining. I think that will provide, many hours of amusement. And I also wanted to add my congratulations to the city of Walden. The floating solar panels, at least in that video, sounded like the best thing since M&Ms. And I would really like to learn more about it, how that works, because it seems to make absolutely perfect sense. Parking garages and water bodies with solar panels on them seems to me to be a very good idea. I often put up the Denver Water Watch report, but the reporting only starts in January, so there's not that much, but I do have the results. The reservoir storage in Denver Water system is 77%. The historic median is 81%. So it's down a little bit, but not to worry thus far. In the South Platte Basin, not the whole basin, just Denver Water's watershed from which water is drawn, the precipitation is 119% of average, and the snow levels is 126% of normal. In the Colorado, precipitation is 111% of normal, and the snow levels 120% of normal. So we're doing well, but it's January. There was one feature of the Water Watch report that was not included this month, and that is given stream flow forecasts, the folks in planning at Denver Water predict what the reservoir storage will look like system-wide based on wet, average, or dry years. And however, the NRCS snow survey and water supply forecasting section was furloughed, and therefore stream forecasts were not available, and therefore the predictions could not be made. It's only January, so it's not quite as critical, but it is just one of the ways that a shutdown can affect what we all do in unanticipated ways. One of the things that happened recently is that Denver Water the Corps of Engineers was sued over the 404 permit for Gross Reservoir expansion. Denver Water will be intervening. The lawsuit was brought by Save the Colorado, Gary Wachner, who's really the main plaintiff, but also Sierra Club and Wild Earth Guardians. The lawsuit was filed in December and brings claims under the Clean Water Act that the least environmentally damaging project was not chosen. NEPA, of course, the studies are outdated. You really don't need the reservoir, those sort of common claims. And the Endangered Species Act, because the biological opinion on the cutthroat trout was insufficient. This is a project, for those of you who may not remember, that was started in 2003. The Corps began its activities. The draft was issued in 2009. The final was issued in 2014, and the record of decision came out in 2017. So it's been a long and arduous process, and it's very interesting. I mean, Denver Water believes, and Governor Hickenlooper at least agreed, that this is the way projects should be done, by engaging with people, trying to do the right thing to the extent you can, but still get a water supply and some assurance for those on the north side of our system that they will always have water. We have, Denver Water's hired a DC firm. I keep saying we, but I don't work there anymore. So it'll take me a few years to get over that. Not saying we, but a DC firm out of DC has been hired to help with this massive litigation that's going to happen over the 404 permit. They have offices in Denver, but at any rate, it was interesting to them. So if we're here, those of us who are here, we understand that the history around this and how hard Denver Water has worked. but that's not normal in a NEPA lawsuit. So it was interesting to them that back when Two Forks happened and got vetoed, that the environmental groups at the time issued a paper urging that Denver Water expand existing reservoirs first before building a new reservoir. And Gross Reservoir was in fact analyzed and said, this would be the right thing to do. It's an existing reservoir, so on and so forth. The fact that Denver Water has the Colorado River Cooperative Agreement with the West Slope and has worked out the issues and obtained support and non-opposition for the expansion of Gross Reservoir from those most immediately affected. We have an agreement with the Forest Service, both for the Forest Service property surrounding the Gross Reservoir itself and what's called an off-license agreement for all of Denver Water's activities on Forest Service land on the West Slope. We have the support of Trout Unlimited and Western Resource Advocates and others. So from a perspective of not having been involved for 20 years, that's important. And we're working to get some of those things into the record because it should matter how much effort was taken to in fact address all the issues. So another topic, Colorado River demand management. I just wanted to talk a little bit, remind folks about the predecessor and perhaps the model for where we may end up, which is the System Conservation Pilot Program that began in 2014. That was, in case you might have forgotten, that was started by contributions of $2 million each from Denver Water, Central Arizona Project, Southern Nevada Water Authority, and the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, and $3 million from the Bureau. And that original $11 million, the goal was to have about 80% of that money spent for demand management projects in the lower basin and a little over $2 million in the upper basin to preserve water that would be system water that could go into Lake Powell or Lake Mead from the lower basin. And the program, I was just looking at a Bureau of Reclamation report on the System Conservation Program in the lower basin. They ended up being able to save 116,600 acre-feet of water, most of which is already in Lake Mead. The rest of it will be coming over the course of the next 2 or 3 years. And they spent an average of $160 an acre-foot for that water. The upper basin, which was much more modest, got 22,000 acre-feet of water for an average of $200 per acre-foot. And through that process, of course, many things were learned. How do you manage it? How do you measure it? All that sort of thing. So I think we actually have taken an important step. We didn't know at the time that this started that this would be quite so urgent and quite so timely, that now that the System Conservation Pilot Program has concluded, at least for now we can move into a broader program to hopefully be able to get some real water into Mead and Powell. And finally, I wanted to mention, as the sort of urban representative on the CWCB, the issue that I have talked about from time to time of urban green spaces. And it was triggered by the presentation on land use and water efficiency, water conservation, which is very important, obviously. But to make sure we don't go too far with incentives for density and reducing irrigation. Outdoor water use is actually fairly important for livable communities. And Denver Post did a series of 3 articles on January 13, 14, 15 about density in the city and county of Denver and the loss of green space. And it really has to do with pervious versus impervious area. That when in 1974, only 19% of the city and county of Denver was impervious, hard. Water runs off it instead of sinking through it. In 2018, that has risen to 48%. And it's predicted to go to 69% by 2040. And what that means is all that water just runs off the concrete and runs into the river. And one of the major problems with impervious, the concrete jungle, is the heat island effect of having things that don't absorb, concrete. And so the city of Denver apparently has a more severe heat island effect than other cities. It's almost 5 degrees warmer than surrounding territory out where there's, grass and plains and prairies and things like that. So it's an issue that the city of Denver needs to solve. I mean, clearly with other municipalities in Colorado, we're not there yet. We're not to that level of density. But if in fact the density is increased without the commensurate attention to green space and how important it is for people's peace of mind, the value of their homes, the water quality of runoff and all that sort of thing. So I think we can also think of urban green space as something like an investment in a crop. And I think, anyway, as we go forward, I think we can try to keep all those things in mind. It's, as Director Yon said, it's a great idea to conserve water, except that there are consequences, return flows, the loss of green space. So we have to think about it more holistically as we go forward. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Director Wells. Any questions for Director Wells? All right, well, we'll continue on. The Rio Grande, Director Dutton.
Thank you. I would be remiss to not jump on the bandwagon and welcome all the new faces around the table. It's so great to meet the new folks, and then also, Amy, to see you here as an old friend and have you as an advisor to the board. I'm very excited for your new role. And congrats, Anna, on your new job. It's really exciting to see you move up and to also see someone so deserving fill this position. And so I share the board's excitement. And I do want to appreciate the senior staff, Becky, and your leadership in working really hard to recognize talent within and try to move people up as opportunities arise, because that's fabulous. So thank you for doing that. And steal talent. Yes. Sorry, Director Ryan. So thanks for that. And thank you all for the staff who, works hard behind the scenes to put together these meetings, arranging to keep the coffee flowing and good food. We really appreciate it, and it makes it a lot more comfortable and pleasant. So thank you for your efforts. All right, I will share a little bit about what's going on in the Rio Grande. So we've had a couple Basin Roundtable meetings since the last time we got together with this body. Our December meeting was just really laid back and fun. We wore ugly sweaters and ate Mexican food, and just enjoyed working together and our own local appreciation of some of the sentiments that have been shared, that we may have our differences, but we come together and try to think about the best thing that we can do for water in the Rio Grande. And then I think that permeates up to our attitude is in our place in the state of Colorado. So it was worth celebrating our friendship and our collaborations for the year. In January, we spent a lot of time discussing the long-term changes in hydrology and the potential implications for us. And we also had a really interesting presentation from Colorado Open Lands, who came down to discuss their the results of the ATM grant that they received from the board last year, where they looked at potential pairing of conservation easements with leasing arrangements. And we discussed that in the context of, would there be opportunities for leasing from ag to ag, where the conversations have been leasing on the Front Range from ag to municipality or other users. And so it was a really interesting conversation, and I think that there's a future there that we'll definitely be pursuing. I wanted to throw up the hydrograph. We are sitting at 92% of average, which is very exciting because I have very poor eyesight, but I'm pretty sure it says that we're 242% of last year. So, it's exciting to be there. As Director Wells mentioned, it is only January, so I think we are cautiously excited that we're pretty close to average, but recognizing that we still have a long time to go, and also recognizing that the reservoirs are, they were brought down by last year, and things really dried out. Last year was really tough, and so I think even if we hit average, it still will be a challenge to re-wet the stream channels and to re-wet the watershed. And so we're bracing ourselves for that and that reality. Oh, I have the clicker. I'm in charge of myself. Here we go. I've been doing my own snow surveys, so I just wanted to share how we do it in the Rio Grande. Director Jan uses polls. This is how I check the snowpack, so I can verify that's me falling over. I can verify that we're at 92% of average, but I can also verify that the snow is quite dry and quite weak. So one, be careful with avalanches, but two, again, I think that's where some of the hesitation comes from, that it's exciting to see snow, but it's not big, wet snow. So we're hoping that changes. As was mentioned yesterday, the radar tower is going up, and I just got an email that the tower is complete and the radar will be sitting on top of that tower either at the end of March or the beginning of April. And so even as this tower was starting to go up week before last, I still couldn't believe it. It's incredible that we're at this point, and that something that we've talked about and dreamt of is coming to reality. I think this is the adult version of Christmas. It's pretty amazing, and I can't emphasize enough how much appreciation we have for staff and the role in this, for Joe and his vision, and Kevin and all of his work, and then for Kirk continuing to wrangle the money. And Kirk, every time he comes down for a visit, it snows. So we would appreciate it, Becky, if you would encourage Kirk to come as often as possible to check out this project. So thank you for everyone who's had a part in this. It's a very exciting thing for us. We also have been working on our stream management plans. So this is just a screenshot from a story map that our stream management plan coordinator, Daniel Boyce, put together last week. And it's a beautiful showing of where we're at in the process and the things that we've been doing. And so I'm going to forward the link out to the board so that you can see it as you scroll down. The different efforts that are part of the plan come up as each screen, and you can see, we're doing our conditions assessments, we're evaluating existing data, looking at macroinvertebrates and structure conditions and water quality, and just the whole holistic gamut of the streams that we're focusing on. We also are partnering with American Whitewater on a study, a boatable day study. So Nathan Fay's in the back, and he may be disturbed to know that I plan to fill out that study with my craft of choice being an inner tube on the 4th of July. So where most people are wanting high flows, I prefer them to be low and warm. So, but it's been, in joking aside, it's been great to have that partnership, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the results of what the boating community in the Rio Grande would hope for, and then how can we, just with that better understanding and maybe, one source of information, how can we really shoot for those goals and try really hard to extend the boating season and improve the economy of the valley. So that's been really exciting. We also had we've had an interesting project crop up. Renewable Water Resources is a group that's come to the valley and has proposed a diversion from the valley into an unknown location at this point, but our understanding is the Front Range, maybe southern Denver or Monument area. it's rumors at this point, but this group is proposing a 22,000 acre foot a year diversion out of the north end of the valley over the hill over here. And so we have many concerns, I think, as can be expected, one of which is, as I discussed, we've been recognizing ourselves that we have this changing hydrology. We understand that we have a trend towards a reduced supply, and we're trying really hard to be proactive and to live within our means and to live within the state engineer's rules for groundwater sustainability or proposed rules. And so to have a potential additional stressor added to that, where a group would propose to come in and buy a bunch of agriculture wells and dry them up to be able to meet this demand, it is very concerning that it may be too much for our water supply, and it especially may be too much for our communities to handle. These small communities are reliant on the agriculture economy. There's a lot of farmers and ranchers, but there's a lot of tractor businesses and sprinkler servicers. And so the trickle down from where we're already trying to manage our own resources and recognizing that some land's going to have to come out of production to exponentially speed that up, we're really worried that this is something that our community can't handle. And so I'll keep you aware of that. But you should know that if you go on their website and see this fun little tagline, that's not really the sentiment we share. We don't feel it's the best thing for the valley. It used to stay by the people of the valley for the valley, and we all laughed at that loudly at a public meeting. And so this new tagline is up, and I would say we would disagree strongly with that as well. So I'll keep you in the loop as that progresses. And that is my report.
All right. Thank you, Director Dutton. Any questions for Director Dutton? All right. Of course, last but certainly not least, Director Gallagher from the Yampa.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to congratulate Anna Mouse on your promotion to COO. This is definitely a needed job and can make our organization run more efficiently, and look forward to continuing to work with you. Thank you also to Heinz for your long service to this body, keeping us up and running for not only ourselves, but for the public, more importantly. Like most of the state, we've enjoyed significant snows in the Park Range and Flat Tops. The readings at 13 snowtells in the headwaters of the Yampa White Basin are averaging 14% above their long-term medians. A couple of things. At our January roundtable meeting, the CWCB staff members Greg Johnson and Russ Sands provided an update on the SWASI process and how and when this work might be rolled out for integration with our basin plan. It was well received. There was excellent discussion, and I would like to thank them again for their presentation. Also, Nicole Seltzer of River Network presented an update on the Yampa the Yampa River Integrated Water Management Plan. The project will be moving forward with the financial and in-kind support of Trout Unlimited, the Nature Conservancy, River Network, Community Ag Alliance, Friends of the Yampa, and the CWCB Stream Management Plan grant that we approved yesterday. In other news, over the past year, the Nature Conservancy has facilitated an effort by the Yampa River stakeholders to establish a permanent endowment fund under the auspices of the Yampa Valley Community Foundation. The fund's purpose will be to purchase water for maintaining environmental and recreational flows in the Yampa River, as well as for supporting identified stream restoration projects. On January 10th, subcommittees of the Yampa River Fund Working Group met to report their progress on developing a legal and governance structure for the fund, strategic and financial plans, and marketing and communication plans. They expect to launch the first fundraising campaign at the Yampa River Festival in June. The first target goal is an endowment of $1.5 million, and they're hoping in 5 years to have an endowment grow to $5 million. and that will spin off enough funds to provide support for ongoing projects along the Yampa. Over in the White River, on January 17th, about 100 stakeholders, residents and local officials attended an all-day educational forum in Meeker, sponsored by the White River Conservation District. This is their annual meeting. Also sponsored by the Rio Blanco Water Conservancy District and the Colorado Ag Water Alliance, whom we've funded for this outreach process. Attendees learned about big river issues, including drought contingency planning and demand management. They also learned about water rights administration on the White River, answered a lot of questions, got a lot of questions answered by the division engineer, who was very helpful. Also, they learned about the benefits of developing an integrated water management plan and about proposed activities along the White River in the coming year. So it was a all-inclusive White River water forum. This same kind of forum will take place in March at the first Conservation District meeting in Craig in March. And that's the end of my report.
All right, thank you, Director Gallagher. Any questions for Director Gallagher? All right, thank you, directors, for your reports. We're on time, ahead of time, nicely done. It's always good to hear about the state of Colorado through your eyes. So we'll continue on. This is the time where we'll move into executive session. So our Director Beatty will lead us into that. And so we're going to take about a 15-minute break after you lead us into executive session so that we can clear the room, just board members and staff, so that we can do our executive session. And then we'll be in it, it looks like maybe for an hour or so. We'll see how long it takes, but it's scheduled for about an hour. And we'll come back and talk about in-stream flows right before lunch. So that's kind of our schedule for you in the audience. So I'll turn it over to Director Beatty. Director Weiser.
All right, I am now using the mic. We have a great team at the AG's office and a report we want to deliver, and you've had a chance to meet Amy, who's been a part of this world, and probably know many of the lawyers who are behind it. I just want to thank them for all their work. It truly is a special group, and I'm honored to work with all of them. So I'll turn it over to Amy to deliver the report.
Thanks, everybody. If it's okay, I'd like to take a quick moment to tell everybody how happy I am to be here. I've worked with this team for a long time, both the board and staff, and so I've always appreciated how hardworking and creative and thoughtful and dedicated this staff is. And I've also learned through years of bringing sometimes quite complex projects before this board about how thoughtful and fair your decision-making process is. I've worked with many of you, and I do have some stories I can share at a more appropriate time, but one is really important for me to share today because I think it's pretty fun. I have been a mentor through Water Education Colorado's Water Leaders program for years. I've mentored, I think, 9 different people, and Director Dutton was one of them. We were matched together in a mentor-mentee relationship, and during that process, we actually sat on a panel in Gunnison. And I was sharing with folks how impressed with her leadership I was. And I sat on that panel and I told an entire room full of people that one day I would be working for her. And here we are. And when I was considering leaving the Water Trust in 2017, one of the things that made the decision really hard was how much I loved this community. So it is such a joy and privilege to be back here, to help the board do its great work and to continue the tradition of working at the highest level of integrity, and also to support our new Attorney General, who has a proven interest in the important work that we're all doing. And lastly, I wanted to say thanks to Director Mitchell. She is open and inclusive, and from this vantage point at the Attorney General's office, it's also been really clear to me what a dedicated public servant she is. So, and lastly, I know how much you all valued Laura Chartrand's leadership, and I am aware that I have really big shoes to fill. So, and now
And I got to acknowledge Laura for doing the transition. She did an extraordinary job to make this as seamless as possible. Really, truly exceptional.
I really do feel like I hit the ground running. She handed off things in beautiful shape. So, and now on to business. As you know, the Attorney General's report is in your materials. Our team is here and happy to respond to any questions. And seeing none, then pursuant to statute, I recommend that the board make a motion to go into executive session right now to consider items 20A through 20E as identified on your agenda. This session is authorized pursuant to the provisions of Section 246402(3A2), which I am required by statute to read out loud. And it allows the board to enter into executive session for conferences with an attorney representing the board to discuss disputes that are the subject of pending or imminent court actions, to discuss specific claims or grievances, or to receive legal advice on specific legal questions.
Director Wells. It's been moved by Director Wells, second by Director Goebel, that we enter into executive session. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We are now in executive session, so we'll take a 15-minute break and we'll reconvene at 10:30. report from executive session. Director Beatty.
Pursuant to statute, the board went into executive session to consider agenda items 20A through 20E. Discussion during the executive session was limited to those items, and no formal action was taken during the executive session. We are now out of executive session, and the board is at item 22 on its agenda.
All right, welcome back. Item 22, we're going to move till after lunch because our executive session, it took a little longer and the lunch is waiting back there. So we're going to move item 22 till after lunch. I hope that doesn't bother anybody, but we do have a couple staffing things, and I'll turn it over to Director Mitchell before we head to lunch. Here you go.
All right. Carly, do you have a minute or no? Okay, come on up, and then I'm gonna have Linda say a couple things. So Carly has been with us for a couple years now and has just announced that she'll be moving to DC to work for the House Natural Resources Committee, so the Democratic House Natural Resources Committee. So we just wanted to thank Carly for her time with us, and I'm assuming we'll be working with her a little bit more actually on a few items. So I wanted to thank you, Carly, for your time and And good luck and get the DCP through, okay? That legislation. Linda, can you introduce Colin also? Just so people have a face to name.
Linda Bassey, Stream and Lake Protection Section. I wanted to take this opportunity to introduce Colin Watson. He has taken the position that Don West retired from in December, so he is our water resources engineer. He and Kaylee will be working closely together on our water court cases, and he brings considerable experience and expertise based on his experience with DWR. And we're very happy to have him, so I'm hoping you'll all have a chance to meet him.
Training. And then as we break into lunch, I wanted you all to notice there's a cake in the back. We don't normally have cake, but when we have a retiree, we have cake. And so, as I mentioned yesterday, Heinz is not our own, but we have claimed him. He's been with the state almost 20 years. The office will become significantly more appropriate on his departure, but Heinz will be missed. His love of soccer is something that we have in significant common, and also his love of golf. And so I'm sure he'll spend much time on the golf course and much time with his grandkids. So Heinz, would you mind just saying a couple words about how great we are? And then since Heinz is a picture of health, we did get that cake for him. So I'm sure he'll share.
Listen, actually, one of the things that blew me away today was the Walden presentation. Awesome. And I think it's like the only thing I've ever understood at these meetings. I still don't know what the minimus means or whatever all that crap is, but and to Director George, thanks for this, but and be warned, I looked up today, and the note it says today is raccoons mate now. So you've been forewarned, okay? You all been forewarned. Stay out of the woods. And also, it's Edward Abbey's birthday today, so we can celebrate the cake with that too. Listen, it's really odd to be addressing this august group. I've been proud to provide support to this board and staff to help them achieve their mission, goals, and objectives. And I am humbled by this board's service and dedication. When people ask what I do, I always respond that I provide support for CWCB. Thanks.
All right, thank you. You made Becky cry, so that's. Thank you so much, Heinz, and thank you for all your hard work all these years. So we appreciate you very much. All right, so we'll go ahead and break for lunch, and we'll be at that for an hour. Again, the lunch is for all you guys that were sitting outside waiting us to return from executive session. It's for staff and the board, and we also need those tables in the back. So sorry about that again. So we'll break for lunch and we'll return at 1:20.